Club Novice Chase. Now coming into line, and they're off. Racing on away from the stands, and Sub-Lieutenant on the inside, Jonathan Burke, with alongside Pont Alexander, Ruby Walsh, a couple of lengths to Roy de Frank and Brian Cooper. There's a couple of lengths off the first two as they clear the first fence and race on away from the stands. Pont Alexander on the outside of Sub-Lieutenant, tracked a couple of lengths back by Roy de Frank as they make their way on now towards the second fence, heading away from the stands. Sub-Lieutenant on the inside of Pont Alexander, a couple of lengths to Roy de Frank as the three runners approach number two. And racing away from it, Pont Alexander on the outside of Sub-Lieutenant, about 2.5 lengths or so then to Roy de Frank as they go now to number three, which will be the first of the ditches. Pont Alexander and Sub-Lieutenant matching strides. Just over 2 lengths to Roy de Frank as they approach number three. Ditch on the far side. Pont Alexander on the outside of Sub-Lieutenant and tracked all the while a couple of lengths back by Roy de Frank. So they're making the run across now to the first of 3 fences that will bring them across on the approach towards the straight. Next fence they face will be number 4. Pont Alexander and Sub-Lieutenant. Just 2 lengths then to Roy de Frank as the 3 runners make their way to the first of the 3, taking them in a line across on the approach towards the straight. Pont Alexander and Sub-Lieutenant, a couple of lengths to Roy de Frank. Racing on now to the next of the ditches, and it's little to choose between the 2 leaders. Pont Alexander on the outside of Sub-Lieutenant, the 2 in the air together, 2.5 lengths in front of Roy de Frank. So they're on the run out of the fence that will take them for the approach to the turn in. And it's Pont Alexander on the inside, Sub-Lieutenant, tracked a couple of lengths by Roy de Frank. 3 runners now on the approach to the turn into the straight as they complete the first mile, and still little to choose between the 2 disputing, Pont Alexander and Sub-Lieutenant, and they're tracked all the while, 2.5 lengths, Roy de Frank. Now the 3 swing in to the 2 fences to bring them towards the stands. Pont Alexander on the near side of Sub-Lieutenant, a couple of lengths to Roy de Frank, first of the 2 fences in the straight. Pont Alexander on the near side, far side Sub-Lieutenant, the white cap, and Roy de Frank tracks them 2 lengths back as the 3 will come to the fence. That'll be the last next time, and still disputing the lead, going stride for stride, Pont Alexander, and on the far side Sub-Lieutenant. They rise absolutely together, a couple of lengths in front of Roy de Frank. So the 3 come to race uphill to the winning post in the Woodlands Park 100 Club Novice Chase, this Grade 2 event, as 3 runners come to pass the winning post and race on now to the halfway point. When they swing away from the stands, they have 1.5 miles ahead of them. Pont Alexander and on the inside Sub-Lieutenant. They've matched strides for the first half of the race, and a couple of lengths to Roy de Frank as the 3 swing and race away now to the first fence away from the stands. And Sub-Lieutenant on the inside, Jonathan Burke with Pont Alexander, Ruby Walsh, and a couple of lengths to Roy de Frank and Brian Cooper. Now they go to the first fence away from the stands on the second circuit. Sub-Lieutenant, Pont Alexander, Roy de Frank. On they go now to the second fence away from the stands, which will be about 1.25 miles from the finish. Sub-Lieutenant, Pont Alexander, Roy de Frank. They go now to the second fence away from the stands, and it's Sub-Lieutenant on the inside of Pont Alexander, a couple of lengths to Roy de Frank as the trio approach this one. Sub-Lieutenant, Pont Alexander and Roy de Frank as they turn now to the second last ditch. They've got 6 left to jump, turning now towards this fence, 9 furlongs from the finish, and Sub-Lieutenant, Pont Alexander, Roy de Frank going now to approach this ditch right over on the far side. Sub-Lieutenant leads Pont Alexander, Roy de Frank close in behind in 3rd spot. Over that one, Sub-Lieutenant On the outside, Pont Alexander, half a length between them, 2 lengths to Roy de Frank, racing up now towards the 7 furlong point and beginning to face the first of the 3, taking them across to the straight. They've got 5 left to jump. In the Woodlands Park 100 Club Novice Chase, Sub-Lieutenant in the lead, Pont Alexander, Roy de Frank on the inside. First of the 3 down the far side now, and Sub-Lieutenant and Jonathan Burke a couple of lengths in front of Pont Alexander, followed by Roy de Frank. Sub-Lieutenant over 2.5 in front of Pont Alexander, and then a length and a half to Roy de Frank. Last of the ditches, 4 from the finish, and Sub-Lieutenant travelling nicely in the lead for Jonathan Burke. Jumps this one well, Pont Alexander and Roy de Frank. Now they head for the fence before the turn in. 3 left to jump. Sub-Lieutenant in front. Couple of lengths up on Pont Alexander and Roy de Frank. Back marker of the 3-0. Beginning the run now to take them for the home turn. And it is Sub-Lieutenant from Pont Alexander and Roy de Frank on the inside. Racing off the bend now to straighten up for the final 2. Sub-Lieutenant leads them on the turn in. Roy de Frank has improved on the inside of Pont Alexander, who's now just the back marker of the 3, but not much between them as they straighten up for the final 2. And Sub-Lieutenant now getting a reminder. Pont Alexander coming there in the centre. On the right is Roy de Frank. Rising to this one, Roy de Frank on the outside of Pont Alexander. They've gone on from Sub-Lieutenant down now to the final fence in the Woodlands Park 100 Club Novice Chase. And it is the 2 stable companions, Pont Alexander on the far side, Roy de Frank in the air together and away from it. Pont Alexander now pressed by Roy de Frank on the far side, racing inside the last 150. Roy de Frank on the far side, Pont Alexander as they race inside the last 100. Roy de Frank on the far side and Brian Cooper holding off Pont Alexander, and it's going to be Roy de Frank who wins for Brian Cooper. Second home Pont Alexander, Sub-Lieutenant last of the 3.
Well, a great battle, and Roy de Frank